Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. I wanted to talk about this week some of the issues regarding the recent flooding. And, we think the recent flooding really started June 20th, but I've talked with a lot of people in different areas of Pittsburgh that had flooding back in February, also again in May. And I mean big flooding, like dumpsters floating down the street on Route 51, things like that, that some of us, and you might have seen already on YouTube and Facebook posts. But I wanted to share general information since it seems to be becoming so widespread here, Millvale, Bethel Park, all these other areas, Upper St. Clair, Bridgeville, and just a little bit about, do you have insurance for this? Where do we get funding for this? Will FEMA cover anything for us? What to do about donated supplies? Just all of the issues and areas we're dealing with. So I wanted to talk about that in today's show. The first area that I'm looking at is people talking about, are we covered for anything or are we just totally wiped out? What most people are saying is nothing will cover this unless we have flood insurance, and we can't buy flood insurance unless we're in a flood zone. So none of that's really correct. So I thought I'd start from scratch, go segment by segment, and help along this show on that there are a lot more resources than you think. We all have homeowners insurance. Some of us, if we're renting, have renter's insurance. So let's start there. What we normally get with the coverage for homeowners insurance is some water damage protection. So let's talk about that. We can get water coming in through the roof. We can get water, which is rainwater. We can get water coming in through the windows. We can get water pipes breaking. So let's start from the top of the house and work our way down. If we get rain and we get water in through the roof, and sometimes in the winter we get water that freezes, expands the shingles, and then when the snow melts, water comes in through the roof. That's typically covered. Sometimes they'll say it's an old roof and they'll deny the claim because of that, but that's typically covered. So whether you get rainwater in through the roof or whether you get the ice built up and then the melting water coming in from the ice melting, typically that's going to be covered as long as the roof was in good repair. That's a general homeowner's policy coverage. Water coming in through the windows or window sills. Again, we see it a lot during the winter. That is typically covered as long as the home was not in disrepair, and the insurance company has the right to deny the claims based on wear, tear, or damage done over a long period of time. So if we ever look and we're doing a home improvement and we open the wall and see a lot of damage behind the wall, that's probably going to be denied if it wasn't a water claim. We just happen to notice it. That happened over a period of time, a long period of time, because that's another exclusion under homeowners. But sudden and accidental, that's typically covered. When we go away, a lot of times what happens is we get out of here in the winter and we go down to Florida for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. And that's a high period of risk if no one's checking on our homes, and especially in the winter if no one's checking on our homes, with the risk of freezing pipes. So we get water pipes breaking, and that's another area of water and where we get claims. It's typically covered. Water pipes breaking on a homeowner's, and also if you have a renter's insurance policy and are worried about all your contents, even if the water pipe is not your own. So we'll go to the homeowners first. If we get water pipes breaking, typically that's going to be covered, even if it's as a result of freezing in the winter, unless a couple things. Number one, you forgot to maintain heat in the building. So when you leave in the winter and you turn the thermostat down and it's down to 55 degrees, or it's a vacant house, and let's say you moved out, you bought a new house, your house is still for sale, it's February, it's in the cold of winter, the utilities are off or whatever, the insurance company will deny that claim if you don't maintain heat in that building. Well, what happens when you're away and the heat goes out? Again, you might have a claim that's denied. But for the most part, water pipes breaking, you're going to have coverage for not only the water pipes, but also all the water damage done, whether it's a hot water heater that went or whether it's the water pipes upstairs that went. You're typically going to be covered, including for all the water damage to the building and all the water damage to the contents. When we get to our basement areas, there are many sources of water that we're very familiar with in Western Pennsylvania. The leading cause of water coming into a basement is seepage through the basement walls. So when we get that water seepage, there are no homeowners coverages that I know of that cover that. So when you get water seeping in through the basement walls, and it's common here in Western Pennsylvania, you normally don't have any coverage on the homeowners policies. What we do see are a lot of French drains, and we see a lot of sump pumps, and we see a lot of anchors put into basement walls because of bowing from the ground movement and earth pressure on the walls. But all of that is normally out of our own pocket. So we do have a problem with water seeping through the basement walls. We typically will not have and cannot buy, for the most part, coverage for that. That one we're on our own. Many homeowners have water coming up through the sewers. It's backing up through water pipes, many times due to storms, sometimes due to roots, actually many times due to roots too, or broken pipes. It's different. So what we look at is when we get water backing up through the sewers, if we could document the water backed up through the sewers, which is sometimes by video, a lot of times that's an easy way today. But if there were no storms and your water just backs up and they put a camera down there, plumbers see it's as a result of tree roots or broken pipes, that's a pretty clear water back up through sewers. And many homeowners policies now cover something for water backup of sewers. Many don't, but you can add it by endorsement. So normally that's not automatic. All of you need to contact the insurance companies and ask them, is water backup through sewers available on my policy? Do I have water backup coverage on my policy? If not, how much is it and how much can I buy? Normally it's up to $5,000, maybe up to $25,000. Somewhere in that bracket, you can endorse onto the policy for water backup, and it's not real expensive. In Western Pennsylvania, probably very smart to have. So I'd suggest that all of you get that coverage if you don't already have it. Check on that. Water backup through sewers, even if it's due to storms, now we get a question. The insurance company says it was due to the storm, which would be flooding, that backed up the sewer down the street and then caused water to back up. That causes controversy, sometimes denied claims, and then also just the regular water backup through sewers, which typically would be covered. So check on that and get what you could buy that's available with your companies. When I talk about water backing up through sewers, I'm also looking at any underground pipes breaking. That's a very expensive proposition, whether we get water pipes that are sewer pipes or whether we get water pipes that are water supply line pipes. So the ones coming from the street to supply our house with water, or electrical lines underground, or gas lines underground. If they break, you'll sometimes see the gas company come out, they'll tag you and say there's a leak under there and they shut you off at the curb. Or you'll get the water company coming out, they'll also tag you and shut the water off and say, hey, we see too much water going through the meter, too much usage, we think there's a break. It's your responsibility in almost every community here to maintain your own lines from the curb to the house. Well, if you've ever run into this, you could be looking at $3,000 to $6,000 to dig down to that line, figure out and diagnose if it's broken. After they do the cameras, the professionals normally can get you within a 3 feet area. Hey, dig here, and hope they're right on where they think the break is. But you're looking at $3,000 to $6,000 there that your homeowner's policy might not cover. So what I want you all to consider doing is, I want you to get to the utilities companies, Columbia Gas or Peoples or Dominion Power, whoever it is, and I want you to ask them, do you offer coverage for underground lines and pipes breakage? They normally do, maybe $10 or $15 a month. And even if you go to Dominion, let's say, they keep changing Allegheny Power. They keep changing the providers they get this coverage through. So some of them outsource it to another company. It's not directly by them. But normally if you get that coverage, it covers not only the utility that you contacted, like the electrical company, but you could buy it on your gas lines, electrical lines, water lines, sewer lines, and sometimes you can even insure lines inside the house like phone lines. So check all that and see if you're not covered for it. It could be a real inexpensive way to get coverage for it. And just recently, some insurance companies have come out starting to offer and provide coverage for underground lines. So check into all this, folks, because it can help make a very expensive proposition very inexpensive by picking up those insurances in advance. Okay, we now have a flood situation that we've learned homeowners policies will not cover. And maybe we didn't have backup of water. We truly had the other devastating water that comes into the house, and that's from surface waters. That's ground surface waters. Whether it's from a river overflowing, a creek overflowing, which we all think of as flood, or whether it's from rainwaters that the ground couldn't handle. And so we had running waters, ground running waters, which are also considered floods. By definition, flood waters and damage to our home and our contents is not covered under a homeowner's policy. So we look at floods, and now we have a whole other animal that we're dealing with. Where do we go to get coverage? Can we get coverage, and are we? We have businesses, we have homes, and we have cars. There are 3 different areas and way different on coverages. If I deal starting with homes, homeowners policies are not going to cover floods. As a rule, you will not have any coverage for flood. So where do we turn? Flood insurance. Most people tell us, we can't buy flood insurance. We tried, we were unable to get it, we're not in a flood zone. The way that works is the National Flood Insurance Program is actually a program that's available to every community that's a participating community in the National Flood Insurance Program. And in southwestern Pennsylvania, almost every single community is a participating community. I think I heard Pitcairn might not be. I can't remember where. So check your local communities. But Bethel, Upper St. Clair City, most of our communities are participating. And that means we don't have to have our property located in a designated flood zone to get coverage. National Flood Insurance is available. So all of us, our first step is find out if we could buy flood insurance, because many of the times I'm told, I'm up on a hill, it won't flood here, and we just learned from these recent floods. Rainwater hitting any low area, even on a hilltop, and you see streets that go down in a little gully and then back up, and it's very high. They're getting some flooded homes in those areas. So no longer does that apply. I'm high, so the creeks, if they rise up to here, you know, we're all in trouble. It's rainwaters that we have to think maybe we should be buying flood insurance. The way flood insurance works is you contact the National Flood Insurance Program, and they say, we don't write flood insurance, although all the policies written actually do go through our agency, which is the National Flood Insurance Program. But you have to contact your local agent. They write it through directly an insurance company, and then that is actually funded and written through the National Flood Insurance Program. So interestingly enough, it's all written through, for the most part, the program, but the program won't write it directly. You have to go through a company to actually get it administered, get underwritten, pay the premiums, and then get covered. But the coverage and the claims are actually handled by the National Flood Insurance Program policy itself. The National Flood Insurance policies, or flood insurance as we know it, it doesn't cover much in the basements, but it does cover the structure if there is damage to the structure, which is rare, but it does happen. And it does cover, especially on the first floor, contents are much better covered than they are underground. Underground or subsurface, typically National Flood Insurance, or flood insurance as we know it, is mainly only going to cover your appliances that are connected to the building, which are the furnace, hot water heater, sometimes the electrical boxes, things like that. The rest of the things we have stored in the basement and the garage typically will not be covered by traditional flood insurance. But it is worth having, and it's not that expensive. So check into that, which brings up the other area. Check into mine subsidence insurance, which we also have issues with. And finally, we have earth movement, which is sinkholes. So you need to reevaluate your insurance policies and find out, are some of these coverages available? Maybe didn't even cost much, because what you don't want to happen is a landslide, a sinkhole, mine subsidence, or flood, and then you call the insurance company after it happened and say, am I covered? And they say no. And then you ask the dreaded question, could I be covered? Can it be bought? And they say yes. And you say, how much is it? And they say $35. And here you're wiped out, where only $35, had you asked that question in advance, you might have been able to protect yourself. So get on the phone, review all of your insurances. It's a good time to do a general overall policy review, whether it's for flood or cyber coverage or anything that's been available recently that wasn't available when you got the policy. Just do a general update. Look into all of these issues. Don't wait till this happens and then find out. Okay, now your car was in the garage and the water came in and it was a flood. Is your car covered? Are you covered for any of the damage to the car? Well, that's a good question. It was in the home, so is it covered under the home or the homeowners? No, it's not general contents of the home, and it doesn't have anything to do with your homeowner's policy. So now we're at the car insurance policy, and your car was under water, let's say 3 or 4 feet of water for a half hour and won't start. Is it going to be totaled? Well, you hope so, because if it's not going to be totaled, that means if the mechanics do what they need to do to get it fixed and running, it may never be the same again. The electronic systems may never work the same again, even though it runs, and you may have trouble with that forever. So when we talk about cars, number one, I'm going to caution everyone who's buying used cars over the next 3 to 4 years, and I cautioned people back after the Carnegie flood in 2004. We have to be extra special careful about buying used cars after floods to make sure that we're not buying someone else's flood car and don't know it. So I'll just throw that out to you. But back to the insurance issue, is it covered? Most car insurance policies do. So most car insurance, you can see a lot of flood damage to cars be covered. And now the big problem is, will they total me out and gyp us on the value of the car, or, which may be the lesser of two evils, or will they fix it and I have problems with the car for the rest of the life of that car? But at least you'll probably have some coverage on that on your car insurance if you have comprehensive coverage, which means if you're full coverage, not just liability only on that car. So check into it. Don't assume you're not covered. The other area that we run into are businesses, especially in flood zones or not in flood zones, but who got flooded. And business owners, we look at our policies and normally do have that flood exclusion, just like the homeowners have. We do have the flood exclusion, but any business usually will specify certain schedules of equipment or just different fleets, vehicles, and you're going to find, I think, as a business, if your agent's on top of things, that there are some ways to get coverage that aren't covered under your normal business package policy. And what that is, number one, the vehicles. So most of the vehicles, if they're damaged or in any way altered by this flood, even if they just need flushed out or whatever it is, they're probably going to be covered on your vehicle schedule if you have full coverage, which is really comprehensive. So you're subject to your deductible per vehicle. And for those of you who have customer vehicles on the lots, you have those issues too. And some of the businesses are covering customers' vehicles on the garage keepers legal or whatever coverage forms that you have for your particular business. So you may have some more coverage than you think on the vehicle side. You may have loss of use coverage for the vehicles also. So look into all of that. And then when we get to the equipment side, you may see that a lot of your equipment that is scheduled is on a policy form called an equipment floater or an equipment scheduled, specifically scheduled equipment. Typically, flood is not an excluded peril, which means by default it's included. So that's welcome news for anyone who's got massive equipment scheduled on your policy. You may be entirely covered on flood. Now, for your general contents, you're probably not. For your inventory, you're probably not. So a lot of business owners need to buy flood insurance also as a separate policy. So if you have that trifecta, you have the vehicles covered, you have the equipment covered, and then you buy the flood insurance, you're probably doing the best you can then to make sure that if floods happen, you're not getting severely hurt by not having the insurances you need. Now, what about anyone who had any injuries regarding the flood? Some medical insurance policies, or if it was down at work, your work comp. So what we deal with medical is, number one, insurance. We're dealing with sometimes accidents, sometimes illness. So that's different. If you're in a car and you're hurt as a result of flooding or anything that happens like that, you need taken to the hospital, or you just go to the doctors, or you need something there or get prescriptions. Your car insurance typically, because it happened in a car, if you got hurt getting out of a car, let's say, or were injured or had illness as a result of that flooding right at the time of a car, your car insurance will normally apply first. Your medical payments under the car insurance policy. Most of us have at least the minimum required by the state of $5,000 medical coverage on the car insurance. So when you get to any doctor or any medical information that questions, they'll ask, where did this happen when it's a car? You provide the car insurance information first for the medical. After that, it goes to your normal health insurance carrier. So whether that's group health insurance or private health insurance or Medicare supplement, it doesn't matter. It's your normal medical coverage. Just as anything else, an accident, heart attack or stroke, anything else, this would also be covered. So any of your medical bills as a result of flooding or anything else are typically covered and not excluded. They are fully covered. They're subject to the deductibles. They're subject to the same co-pays, but they are indeed covered under your normal medical. Now, what if you were at work and the actual situation, whether it's illness or an accident, helping someone else or cleaning debris, happened to work? That could be a workers' compensation claim. So you deal with, where do we file that? And again, if you need any treatment, they'll normally ask the doctors or the emergency rooms, they'll normally ask, where did this happen? How did this happen? Happen to work? Okay, you'll supply the workers' comp insurance first, and then your health insurance secondly. That's how it'll normally happen with the health insurance, but it is going to be pretty much covered any way you look at it. It's just one covers, and then when that lets off or goes through its coverages, then it goes through the next one. But you do have a pretty good amount of health insurance coverage on that. Anyone who's volunteering, there are health concerns when you go into somebody else's home or business or anything, or even your own home, 2 days later, 4 days later, it's a different situation than right when a flood occurred. So let's talk about this flooding. But it could be on fires and things like that too. We'll stick with the flooding for this example. There are health concerns. And what you all need to be thinking about are those health concerns. Are you wearing masks? Are you wearing goggles? I don't know if it's going to be loud wherever you are, if there are contractors, but wearing ear protection. And did you get your tetanus shots? And did you get your hepatitis? I think it's A or B, I can't remember. I think it's A, for diseases that can be brewing in those environments that you're going into. So you're just trying to help out, but you don't want to come out a month from now finding out you got some sort of injury or disease that you weren't aware of and could have been prevented. So you have to get the tetanus shots. You have to check into your medical. I do want you to check with any of the health departments, actually, or maybe even contact the local emergency providers and ask them, hey, I'm volunteering and there's been garbage there for a week. Is there anything I need to know? Because there is, and they'll tell you how to help prevent and treat some of those areas before you enter them to protect yourself. So that's an area. Would you be covered for any injuries? Yes, but you want to try to prevent those injuries instead. Anyone who needs money sometimes has to go into an IRA and withdraw or close out the IRA. And that can be a difficult situation because we do owe tax on any money in an IRA that has not previously been taxed. And in most IRAs, that's all the money. Because that's why we did the IRA. We took the tax deductions every year to contribute money to the IRAs. We're contributing $5,000 and $6,000, $6,500 a year to these IRAs to avoid the tax. But then when we need the money, either now due to an emergency during floods, or later once we retire, we will pay tax whenever we pull this money out. So it's not like we need it now for a flood, so we'll pay tax. And had we waited till we get to retirement, we would not have owed a tax. Yes, we would. We might be in a higher tax bracket now than we would have been after retirement, or maybe not for that matter. But that tax is getting paid one way or the other. By us needing the money now in an emergency due to a flood does not mean we're paying a tax we would not have paid someday. It does mean we might be paying it all lump sum, which pushes it into a higher bracket. We may pay 20%. We may pay 28% income tax bracket. So if I need $10,000, it could easily cost me $2,800 or $3,000 lost. And I only get $7,000, but I took $10,000. $10,000 went onto my income tax return as additional income this year, which causes other complications and problems. In addition, if I'm younger than 59 and a half, there's also an additional 10% pre-59 and a half penalty, surrender penalty, that excise tax actually. So now it's not 30%, it's 40% lost. I pull $10,000 and only get $6,000. So there's a problem. Now, some of the IRAs and some of the 401ks have hardship provisions. It's very tough to meet these hardship provisions. Normally it has to be, if you're going to pull it for the floods, it normally has to be declared a disaster zone, and some of our areas were. So don't dismiss the idea that you might be eligible for a hardship provision, which can help mitigate some of these penalties and costs. So check into that, folks, but don't ignore as a last-ditch possible area for you to receive money to help you out. Thanks again, everyone. I appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll be back again next week for another edition of All Things Financial.